So this half an hour session is opening up, to the floor on any sort of questions that any one of you might have, and we're here to answer. But before we start, I'd just like to give you a bit of background on who we are and what teams we're from. So Guy, why don't you start off, Guy?
Yeah, so my name's Guy Newton and I lead the Southeast Asia Apps Monetization team. And the product we specifically work on, or my team works on specifically, is AdMob. I've been in Singapore for about 9 months now. My accent is Australian. I do come from Australia, where I was working with the Google AdMob team again in Sydney for the last, previous 3.5 or so years. But thrilled to be here chatting with all the game devs amongst you.
I think I'm the only one on stage who is not Aussie.
That's true. That's okay. We'll let a few in once in a while.
I'm Nopparat, Yokubon, and I'm with Google. My team specializes in helping apps and games with user acquisition on Google Marketing Solutions. And my team covers Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. I've been with Google 8 years, and the first 7.5, the bulk of my career was with the same team as Guy on paying users, paying developer for advertising placed inside their apps or on their website. But now I charge them for marketing dollars and in exchange of high quality users. And the product that we work with ranges from anything from ads on YouTube, ads inside Play for search solution, search.com, to ads inside other partners with us on AdMob. That guys pay them money. I charge money to place ads inside those games. So that's what I do.
Cool. And my name's David Yin. I take care of Google Play business development. These lights are really bright, huh? Google Play business development for Singapore, Indonesia, Australia, New Zealand. So my main objective is working with my managed partners and growing their business on Google Play through a few initiatives, such as featuring Google Play product adoption, strategic partnerships throughout the region, going global, and so on. So so that's me. So why don't we open the floor to the very first question? I know the first question's always tough, but who would like to ask the first one?
Direct it to David first. I know Google have been having a lot of different events, and oftentimes it's been presentation format. So we thought this will just open up the floor, giving everyone an opportunity to ask all of the teams that are relevant to you for all of the developer, from building, developing, acquiring users to getting paid. So here we go.
Cool.
Hello. I think there's this new indie developer category that Google is pushing for the Play Store. So maybe it will be good to share with the guys here more about this category and how it will help the smaller developers.
Yeah. So I guess I'll take that one. So there's a new category called the indie category. It originated from Mountain View, and it's kind of a similar featuring process to be included in that indie category itself. So you're an indie developer, right? Obviously, yeah. So if you'd like to be considered for that, we can have a chat afterwards. I'll give you my email address. You can just email me directly, and I'll share with you the process of trying to get featured in that indie category itself. But it's a good question. Yeah, it's fairly new as well.
Is that global?
Yeah.
And localized per markets as well, where appropriate?
At the moment, yeah. But it's a kind of it gives indie developers a chance to get featured, and not the very top sort of new and updated, but a separate sort of category. And some of the Aussie developers are in there as well. Yeah.
And for these purposes, how are you defining indie?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have some internal criteria on that. Yeah, but everyone's got a chance.
With regards to stage rollout in the initial month once your app gets into production, I want to know how they are affiliated with one another, in the sense that it does one necessarily interfere with the other. Let's say I do a stage rollout for 2 weeks. However, I know there are thresholds that have to be met in order to make the top new games category. I wanted to know if I do a stage rollout, which will only release for chunks of users, will that interfere once that stage rollout is completed? Will that interfere with once I do a full release?
So it's a good question. So stage rollout is part of the overall alpha testing, beta testing, stage rollout, and then published fully. So the answer to the question is no, it doesn't affect it. My advice is definitely carry out your alpha testing, beta testing, and stage rollouts first. Get real live user feedback and reviews, and really understand what they're saying, and then publish it globally. In that sense.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, does it affect the top app and games? No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, and we should definitely have a chat as well after this. I can also go into more details on that.
All right, great, thank you.
No worries.
What I might do then, while people are mulling over what question they should ask, I'll just give everybody a quick little update in terms of what's happening in the monetization world with Google. So it's pretty exciting. Many of you may know as well that this week is I/O, so that may be or may not be related to some of the things I'll mention. You can finalise those conclusions later this week, I guess. So from the monetization perspective, many of you may know about AdMob. Many of you may indeed be using AdMob to monetize your apps. So a couple of the things that the team are working on that are really cool. One of them is native ads. I think so. Many of you may understand the value that native ads can bring to both your users and also the to advertisers, as well as to yourselves as ultimate or business owners who are interested in revenue. So native ads is something that's pretty cool that's been coming out to AdMob over the last few months as well. And so this week again, there's going to be some cool things coming out from that. How many of you actually use native ads or any sort of? Yeah, fantastic. A few down the front. Anybody else? People, does everybody understand what native ads are? Yes? No? Who doesn't understand what native ads are? Okay, that's fantastic. So native ads are pretty cool. So that's something that's going to be coming out in the next few months and allow us as the AdMob team to contribute to the $21 billion native ads market as well. So that's something that's pretty exciting. And another one is rewarded ads. So right now, AdMob is involved from a rewarded mediation perspective as well. I assume most, if not all of you, know about rewarded ads. It's a fantastic alternative to being able to incentivize users to engage with an ad in return for value that they're able to capture within the app environment as well. So AdMob is getting involved from a mediation perspective. So essentially being able to balance multiple ad networks to ultimately improve your yield from a network perspective as well. Rewarded ads, is that something most of you are interested in or actively involved in? Yeah, fantastic. Tell me some of the ways that you're using it or interested in exploring it in the future.
Some sort of a limit. So for example, maybe they can only get this reward incentive 5 times a day. Yeah. Because we also don't want to have the system being abused or the in-app purchase users feel that they are not getting their worth.
Fantastic. And if anybody has any other questions, please just jump in.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ina. I'm from Wargaming. I'm interested when you will introduce your own rewarded ads.
So it's
I know that you are in beta now. You are starting the beta, right?
I wouldn't say we're in beta. I'd say we're in pre-alpha. If that's even
Sorry.
a thing. So I think smaller organisations, smaller networks, it's quite easy for them to be able to build and implement a rewarded model because it's a smaller organisation. There's less internal complexity. Google, of course, is quite the opposite. Very large, very complex, multiple different stakeholders, and they're very large stakeholders. So you think of the environment for rewarded ads, it involves advertisers, it involves developers, and it involves the tech in between as well, plus a whole lot of other things as well.
What I'll add to that point is for rewarded specifically. So Guy represent developers who are keen to make money off rewarded. I represent advertisers who want to spend money to get high quality users. So I think we need to strike that right balance to make sure that whatever solution that we rolled out, it's positive for both developers and advertisers and the users that are playing games on Play integrated games. So I think there are a lot of stakeholders that we're managing to make sure that we deliver a positive experience and something that we can scale.
Yeah, that's right. So all that appropriate work is being put into it to understand truly if it's going to be an appropriate solution across the board.
Okay, thank you so much.
AdMob has this mediation option for video ads where I think we can integrate through the Unity video ads. So when you mentioned the rewarded ads coming in, will they be of a video format or is it still static image?
I couldn't even begin to say right now, again, because of the kind of complexity from an advertiser perspective as well. Most rewarded providers do generally provide videos anyway, and so that's certainly something that our mediation platform, our rewarded mediation platform, caters for in terms of the metrics from a reporting perspective and you guys ultimately receiving the funds appropriately as well. So in terms of what Google's working on, I couldn't even begin to say what direction it's heading in, if it heads in that direction as well.
Okay.
I guess with all the buzz around VR in Google I/O and Casual Connect today, what do you think, or do you know anything about how Google Play Store will move forward with the VR aspect of it?
It's a really good question. And actually, one of my New Zealand partners is actually presenting on VR today, Mario from Pickpock. So he'll be a good session to attend as well. But the short answer is we are developing a early access program to virtual reality where we can nominate partners to be part of it. To be honest, it's still a very early stage with VR in terms of development work for it, but it's a big industry. It's definitely on a growth path, and Vineet will reach out to you to be included in to be nominated for the program. But it's kind of still early stage at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I have a question related to the next billion users. Google often talks about the next billion users coming from emerging markets. And I see two different initiatives at Google, one being the progressive web apps to address cheaper, lower performance handsets, or lighter, smaller native apps. I mean, these are the two options today we're facing if we want to address the next billion users. What is your take? What is your recommendation? Should we try to build a progressive web app, or should we try to build a lighter version of an Android native app?
So it's a good question, Owen. I think it really depends because it kind of addresses different segments of the emerging markets. So progressive web apps is very focused on the segment of users that are still kind of getting used to the web, and that's why progressive web apps is very optimized for that sort of experience itself. Native itself, APK size for emerging markets, we normally recommend below 100 megabytes for the emerging markets itself. Having said that, just a few weeks ago, we released a emerging market readiness program from Google Play. It's on the website now, so I think it's developer.android.com, and it gives you a very detailed, thorough understanding of the emerging markets on what to look out for. But once again, PWA, progressive web apps, or native, it really depends on the developer in terms of what sort of users they're going after, what sort of segment. And I know with your app, it's probably relevant for both because it's an information app, right? It's content.
So we have some of our developers/advertisers who are working on both. They've launched their progressive, it's an information type of app. So they've launched a progressive web app, and they also have an app, and they are in emerging market. So what I might do is share some perspective of how our developer think about approaching different solution. So what seems to be going well for a progressive web app is to get that first trial, because the cost to install, there's always cost associated on, hey, like how big is the APK, would cost me data. For progressive web app, it's just, they can try without having to download. So low commitment, low barrier to entry. But obviously the notification function or the ability to push notification and other thing might not be as superior as app. So I don't think it's going to replace each other. It's more of like complement, and how do you get first trial usage?
And also, yeah, I think so. I would agree. But just to add on that as well, I mean, in terms of resource requirements, from your side, from a developer side, does it take much more effort to develop both? In terms of, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of it's a distribution. I mean, the wider the distribution and the different, whether you have PWA or whether you have native, will help your business, but it depends on your resources. Whether you have to dedicate a full-time engineer to do PWA, and then I don't know, is that a lot more effort to develop for both?
Well, I think it is because
Okay.
they use different technologies.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, today if we have native Android developers, they might not be skilled in the technologies we need, even though it's simple as
Yeah.
JavaScript and HTML.
Yeah.
We have Java developers or
Yeah.
Swift and Objective-C developers. So, yeah, it probably means we need to allocate different resources to it.
Yeah, I think PWA is definitely worthwhile to take a look at it. I mean, we have the technical guys to support that as well. And given the size of your business, I think it's probably worthwhile to take a look at it in terms of resources. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Hi. Can you guys already share success cases for mobile games and the subscription business model that is now actually having positive traction? Of course, especially working in Southeast Asia with payment rates sometimes far below 1%, we all are looking for different business models, and I'm very, very interested to hear actually whether there are already case studies actually for game developers and publishers operating in a subscription business model.
Well, I think all of us can speak to this from my hat as working with developers on user acquisition. Oftentimes, our developers have very, very different strategy how they approach emerging market versus developed market. And oftentimes, again, it's not bulletproof. It depends on the strategy, the risk profile that you want to invest. But what I've often seen is for developers who target emerging market, they would have ad-funded model versus IAP model. And they would treat how they acquire users in those different buckets differently, the way that they bid, the way that how aggressive they go after those users. And for developed market, on the other hand, oftentimes it makes money for developers, but it's also a lot more expensive to acquire users in those markets. And I heard this from one of our developers that, like, for most of the games, no one want to be playing in a 100 people game. They want to be in the top segment of, a million people game, a 500,000 people game. So oftentimes, emerging market can work as that cushion to get your games up and running. While you hunt for whales. And I think you need to be experimental on how you want to monetize. IAP is key. Oftentimes for those users who's not going to pay, you have AdMob. You've got other monetization solutions that could help cushion the cost of user acquisition and development. Anything you want to add, Guy?
Only a small thing, and it's perhaps a question to all of you here. For those that are using in-app purchase or subscription models, what proportion of your audience are actually engaging with those? You can shout them out if you like. Less than 5%, 5 to 10%? Yep. Yeah. So
You got the message.
so between 0 and 5. And so I think that reinforces Nopparat's point as well. It really depends. It depends on all sorts of in-app and non-in-app considerations, economic factors, cost of living, blah, 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 all those sort of things, disposable income. I mean, when growing a business, being able to look at those kind of economic factors, I think is really important to being able to understand and work out the opportunity cost of different monetization models.
Yeah, I think George, from Southeast Asia specifically, right now, I don't see like specific game developers going down they haven't launched a subscription model or service before. I do hear from the community that they're thinking about it. And only a few of my managed partners are kind of thinking about it. But, if the question to me is, do I know anyone that has gone live? At the moment, no, but they're definitely thinking about it. And it goes back to what Guy and Nopparat has said. It's part of an overall monetization strategy for them, and whether it makes sense from a Southeast Asian perspective to go subscription model for gaming versus in-app purchases and advertising. So it's kind of it's a very early stage at the moment.
Since we're on that topic, I'll highlight some features for user acquisition with Google that I think it might be relevant to the people in the room here. So one of the announcements that we made at GDC just a month ago, it's active gamer targeting. And what that does is it allows you to buy users on Google with a checkbox to say, only show ads to active gamer, as defined by any users who play integrated games for minimum 30 minutes in the last 30 days. So that's something that we found to be very effective for game developers. And the other exciting feature that we rolled out just a few months ago is payer targeting. And what that does is it takes data from Google Play, thank you, to be able to say, hey, only show ads to users who have made purchase on Google Play before. So there are ways that we can leverage data that Google has to reach to users who have high propensity to paying.
With that first one, is that Google data as well, or bring your own data?
It's Google data from Google Play. There are other targeting technology that you can leverage your own data until Google go and find more of this.
I think that's a really interesting point as well. How many of you are actively implementing and using and understanding your analytics and your user behavior within the apps? Please, everybody, put your hands up. I think it's a really important point as well, being able to understand as much as you possibly can about your users, literally what's their session duration, how many times are they getting in there each day, what's their spend behavior, where are those spends coming from, being able to segment based on all sorts of data sets. I think it's a really important way to be able to understand not only the current situation for your users, but also identified future opportunities and ideas, and get your teams involved to be able to come up with more creative ways of growing re-engagement levels, growing session duration. I think some of those points are really, really important. So hopefully next time we can see maximum hands raised to the active use of analytics.
I think we can probably take one more question,
Yeah,
and then we'll bring people more interesting than us on stage.
Exactly, our partners.
Have you seen any special trend for monetization in Southeast Asia? Something that haven't been seen in other emerging markets or developed market as well?
I can give it a go. What I've seen personally, and quite shocking for Southeast Asia, is developers. The one that we've been working with, a large percentage of them are not taking that data as seriously as they should be. So oftentimes people think about, this is not just acquiring users on Google, but acquiring user everywhere through whichever network that they work with, and only measure the number of installs and cost per install, but nothing else. So while if you look at more developed market, they treat that data as gold. And once you get the users in, you want to measure what is the funnel that they go through, how are they actually contributing to overall bottom line. Like a lot of very, very globally established game studios, they have data scientists working on this to really understand what is the lifetime value of the users, and lifetime value as defined by looking at ads, clicking on ads, buying IAP, bringing in other higher quality users and whatnot. So I think to summarize, it's how serious developers are about their data and actually turn that into insights to make improvement on their game development and user acquisition strategy. I think that would be the biggest difference that I've seen.
A point I might add to that as well, coming from Australia, being a developed market where a lot of the developers there have a long history of kind of success and talent as well, and they focus their apps towards a global audience, primarily an English-speaking audience, admittedly, but a global audience is the main point. Since working in Singapore and meeting a lot of Southeast Asian developers as well, we've often been talking about the concept of going global and trying to get a lot of these developers to not just to understand the value of building for an audience outside their actual market as well. So that's something that we talk about quite often. So I think being able to understand the difference between a local audience and a global audience as well, and being able to build and and evolve appropriately towards that. It's a very generic point, but it's been one of the big differences I've seen between developed and emerging.
Yeah, and then, and then just to add in terms of a trend, a monetization trend from a play perspective, I'm seeing a lot more, I'm seeing an acceleration of premium games going into free. That's really, really kicked off the last 6 to 12 months especially. With the growth of Android globally, that trend from a premium game to a free game with in-app purchase is really accelerating now. And I reckon about over 90% is a freemium model. But Nopparat had a good point. Like, customer lifetime value is very, very critical, regardless of what monetization form you use. And then, with AdMob and with in-app purchases, looking at the overall customer lifetime value, and then from a user acquisition part, looking at the CPIs and the costs of acquiring that user is absolutely very critical in that sense.
Let's welcome on stage.
Yeah, let's welcome on stage
our partners. And what we might do is let's get them to introduce themselves. I'm sure you probably know most of them already, but just for formality, why don't we go ahead and do a quick self-intro. Starting from you, TT.
Okay, I'm TT Lim. I'm from Gameview. We are the developer and publisher for Southeast Asia.
Hi, my name is Francis. I'm from Gumi Asia, so I'm the user acquisition director. And Gumi Asia does global publishing for being a global publisher and also developer for worldwide games.
Right. So yeah, my name is Anton. I'm from Touchten, and we are mobile game developer from Indonesia that we also do publishing, and also we do a loyalty reward platform since 2009.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess a summary of that is a great deal of experience across publishing, monetizing, local audiences, global audiences, user acquisition, the lot.
Okay, so why don't we start? I'll ask the first question to Anton. So Anton, Touchten Studios, one of the most highly recognizable and popular brands from Indonesia itself. Indonesian market is massive, but you've chosen a path where you're not only just focusing on Indonesia, you're looking at the global market, and a lot of your games are not just for the Indonesian market, they're very focused on the global market. What's the thought process or the rationale behind that choice or that decision?
Yeah. First of all, if you say what you say and you mean what you mean, it's because of you, because of Google. So yeah, Android is a very big market. I have a very big market share in Indonesia, and that's why we are here. The rationale behind that is, I think number one. I don't know if you guys know this about Indonesian gamers, Indonesian behaviors, gamers' behaviors, is that they are very receptive to outside gaming with English content. So it's very seldom you need to actually localize, unless if it's a story-based or unless if it's a religious apps or something like that, then you need to kind of localize to Indonesian language. But it's very strange. We did something like, we localized an app totally. We localize it to local Indonesian game with Indonesian language, and they think that it's because it's made in Indonesia, it must be bad. So we end up reversing everything to English, and then this is a non-Indonesian developer, then it must be good. So I'm from Indonesia, but whenever I say I do games, people always think that I'm the bad developer. They don't know the games that I make. So that's number one, and which is a good thing for us, because that means we don't have to really focus on language specific or even region specific. So we just focus making great games so that not only Indonesian people can enjoy, but people who speak English like Australian, New Zealand, Singapore can enjoy as well. So that's the thought, simple.
Cool. Guy, did you have a question?
Well, I'm curious firstly, do you guys have any thoughts, additions to those points?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting insights for Indonesia market, that English game. So on our side, I think like Southeast Asia as a whole, is picking up very fast in terms of mobile. And because a lot of people from Southeast Asia are mobile first, they don't touch PC. So they are, very in touch with the interface and so on. The main problem we face over here is for localization and stuff. Southeast Asia as a whole, it's not as good as, it's picking up, but it's not as lucrative as the main English markets. Yeah.
Cool. TT, I want to ask you something about monetization.
Oh, okay.
Native ads, what's your opinion?
Right now, as we know, currently all our games, the paying user probably is less than 5%. So, and the retention is high, so how we can maximize our profit and revenue from the game. I think native apps actually is a better user experience. It makes them feel like this is something that belongs to our games, okay? And we are currently, under implementation of both native ads and interstitials and all this into our game, and try to maximize our revenue to grab, like what I said, the 95% users, they are not our paying users. See how can we get more than that.
Can you give us an insight into the type of implementation you're making and the considerations you're taking to where you place those native ads versus non-native ads, I guess?
Sorry?
So I guess essentially where are you putting native ads versus non-native ads? And what considerations are you keeping in mind when deciding where you should put a native ad?
I think the native apps, we are more focusing on the casual game. Yeah. And so interstitial is more on those hardcore games that we can do differently. This is what we thought at the moment what we do.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sorry, Anton, how about yourself from Touchten perspective in terms of native ads and mobile advertising? Is that a key strategy there as well?
I think in the region, especially Southeast Asia, everybody knows they don't pay any. They're not. They are not a paying region yet, I think, because of the, a lot of economic situation and stuff. But so I think, of course, advertising relies heavily on advertisers who, of course, they want ROI. And if there are not a lot of people who pays, then the advertisers also don't pay a lot of money. However, I think by not implementing ad solutions such as AdMob and video ads, which are really great for, rewarded or non-rewarded interstitial video that we do, I think you're putting money, just like that on the table. So we did that, and we have some revenue. Of course, it's not as fantastic as the U.S. market, let's say, but it's better than nothing, and I think it works well for us. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. If I want to take one step back before you're actually getting users in and start monetizing them, user acquisition is something that is key to all game companies, game studios. So I'd like to direct these questions at, maybe we'll start with TT on how do you evaluate which partner to work with, to partner with in user acquisition? What are the type of profiles that you're looking for, and how do you measure success?
I think for the past 2 years that we have been running on user acquisition for all our mobile games, somehow we realized that sometimes you don't know how's the quality of the users. But for the past 6 months, we have been implementing our own tracking system, whereby I will be able to differentiate the different funnels of our users to come into our game, and how many of them are paying users, and we will evaluate based on different networks, whether this network come in, how many % of them is converting to the paying user, and how many of them are not paying users. And from every different funnel, we will evaluate the possibility of how we're going to work with them. If the partners doesn't bring us quality users, I think we shouldn't continue throwing our money into that.
And I know this because you shared with me that you work with 50-something plus ad network at the beginning.
Yeah, probably more than that, because sometimes people really hunger for traffic, and I've been pestering David for a very long time for a feature.
Just a reminder on stage, David.
I was asking him every time, David, when is my time? So
how do you make that shortlist from over 50? How do you shortlist to, hey, who are the key partner that you should be spending more time with?
Okay, so basically it's those that can bring me revenue. It's so simple, that's it. Because those who can bring me revenue, I will spend more money on that. And even though sometimes, you know, the user acquisition might be more expensive, okay, based on certain funnel, but those who can bring us revenue, I don't mind paying more to get the users.
Got it. If I can pass that to Francis, and your thoughts on how do you evaluate and traffic acquisition partners?
Well, Francis is the expert in the UA side, isn't it?
Yeah. So thanks. I think it's the same thing. Ultimately, we are looking for revenue, but there are a lot of KPIs in the middle. If you just look at the ROS, which is the end, it's very hard for you to evaluate like a network very fast. So we take in-between metrics like tutorial complete, level 5, level 10, and we track all those metrics to make sure like user pay maybe 5% within the 7 days, and we are getting back like returns within the 7 days. That's how we do a very quick judgment on the networks. Right now, I would say Google is one of the best. Facebook and Google are one of the best right now. The networks, you tend to get frauds. And of course, you must have fraud detection to actually figure out how to, like the clicks are coming from this country, the install come from this country, then there's something wrong. So internally, we have like fraud detection. We have an internal BI tool to actually segment out users from each networks, each channel, how are they performing in terms of retention, in terms of the social sharing, and of course in terms of revenue. So revenue is the ultimate goal, and LTV and ROS are the main metrics we look at.
Can I ask a slight follow-up? What would be your advice, Francis, to indie developers who are trying to strike that balance between free users and paid users, meaning free users that they get through App Store ranking, virality, other kind of free areas featuring, versus being able to put a focus towards paid user acquisition?
Yeah, for our games, actually now we see that using Facebook and Google data, especially with Google Play data, it's actually very strong that your paid users are more valuable than your organic users. But of course, as an indie developer, anything that's free, it's the best. So if you can make the most out of like your ads, or you can make the most out of organic via social media and going viral, that's your main choice. So just go for that, and then after that, evaluate your game. That's how you do like testing, and then that's how you improve. So I always think that don't do user acquisition before you figure out like your monetization model. So make sure the game monetizes well, your users come in, and then do UA. If not, it's a waste. Yeah.
Anton, how about yourself in terms of a UA perspective from Touchten?
Just to add what Francis just said is that, yeah, I mean, we used to be indie as well, but we are still, we're not that big. we got funding. That's just the difference between. But I think until now, I think the mystery, the big mystery is the game design of how you get people coming in from all those different channels and making them make their first purchase, their first dollar, deposit, and then that's how you know that this guy or girl is committed to your game. And I think as an indie, we sometimes just want to make games that we want to play, right? And then you don't have a team of analytic team just like Gumi or even Gameview who monitor all this data and LTV and all those metrics, because we just ship out a game that we, maybe with blood, tears and whatever it is. And then you just ship it out there, and then you don't know what to do next. And then your game design is just things that you want to play. So that's my perspective, because I think in our early days, we make casual games. We make games that, we know people is not going to pay, and we just spend like $5,000, $10,000 money that it's very precious for us. And we realized that, okay, after getting to the top rank, we didn't get anything back. So that's a big mistake for an indie to make, before you do anything else. Make sure your game design is well balanced, just like Francis say, so that people are catered to paying. Yeah.
So if I put that in a slightly different way, prepare for scale, or assume that you're going to be successful and prepare for it early.
Yeah, you got to think big and you got to dream big, I think, from the beginning.
Hi, thank you for the good talks. Regarding I would like to ask a question for Mr. Anton and for the three of you. So regarding the monetization, so besides Google, is there any other platforms in Southeast Asia that's very effective?
You mean for ads? Monetization. I think in Southeast Asia, we just experimented with the sub-dollar pricing that Google have, and to be honest, it's really promising with the amount of users we have. We put, Indonesia is, as you know, it's not monetizing well. However, when we put the 3,000 rupiah price up, and we persistently show it to them and tell them the benefit. Oh, you get all these things just for 3,000 rupiah. We see, an increase of from $0 to about $30 a day to even sometimes $60 a day, which is better than nothing, and which is, it's a big jump considering just 30 cents, and we get, so we got like about so many people paying. So I think one of those, if you have a game, try to utilize that as well, because I think it makes a difference for us if you talk about monetization. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I may also add to that from an ad monetization perspective. So irrespective of my jokes before, there are multiple networks, ad networks, that do compete against each other. AdMob is just one of those, and you can see outside there are others. Won't mention any. I think one crucial point is, and this is something that we believe a lot in the AdMob team, we want developers to be successful, and whether they're going to be successful from just using AdMob or not, that's something that we want to be able to help provide an environment for. And so I think the main point is that I'm trying to make is, yes, there are multiple competing networks, allow them to compete at a like-for-like level. So most of these ad networks have an auction system to ultimately dictate which is the most valuable ad at any particular time to display towards that user. Now, that's happening at an individual network, but the ideal scenario is to have multiple networks also doing that, so having their own mini auction. So I think being able to keep that in mind and understand that there are ways to be able to maximise your yield so that at any particular time you're delivering the most valuable impression. That's the main point that I'm trying to make. And there are mediation platforms and tools available to do that, of which AdMob, as I was saying before, is one of them.
Yes, so just to add on Guy's comment, so I mean the mediation platform he was mentioning, the AdMob mediation platform, kind of takes out the hard work for you guys to go and approach 150 different ad networks out there. So the mediation platform from AdMob does that, and it maximizes in terms of earnings in that sense. But also, it's important to look on not just on the supply side, but from an advertiser's perspective. On the other side, one big thing they look for is scale. So which ad network has the scale globally for me to put my brand, to put my game, to put whatever they're advertising out there? So AdMob and Google has that reach and that scale globally, which kind of makes it easier for you to do that itself. Yeah.
Just a question with regards to devices. So I know that, for example, Android devices, there's actually a lot. So just want to ask, like, generally, how do you all handle, because sometimes for games, especially if you do a very intensive on the CPU kind of games and stuff like that, generally, how do you all handle, like, there's no easy way to block device by memory and stuff like that. So then you'll just end up getting bad reviews from those with weaker devices, and especially so in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
I think now in the Google developer backend, you can have a features that you can choose to test with a different type of handphones. I think it's not launched yet.
So TT's right. The feature is called Cloud Test Lab, yes. Where we do the heavy lifting and we test across all the different devices globally. But it's not open to the public as yet, but it will be soon. It will be soon. Yeah.
But in the meantime, usually, there's other software right now for you to able to test. But I don't think it can be 100%. The gadget has been launching every day, and sometimes, getting a bad comment from all this, sometimes it's not related to, to the gadgets. Probably some latency issue that caused this, and everyone will blame on this. But I think it's not that crucial at the moment because so far everything will be okay based on the Android versions.
So you're kind of saying build for the majority, not necessarily build for everyone, particularly with fragmentation.
For some of our advertisers, particularly in the US and EMEA, the large established game studios, from user acquisition standpoint, many of these studios target high-end device exclusively and bid very, very aggressively because these are users that newer device like iOS 9 and all of those that pay more. So from user acquisition standpoint, people differentiate device and go more aggressive with high-end device and sometimes exclude lower-end device. But Anton, I think you have a point that you want to add?
I think, just, we are from Indonesia, and as you know, Indonesians have a lot of below $100 phones, and that's really costing us a lot of headache because once it's not running on your phone, they blame it on us. Right? It's like, oh, are you really a game developer or something like that? Sometimes it's insulting and stuff. But, we live that every day. And I think the key is, the great thing about Google Play that I like is you can reply to the comments. Of course, some of the mean one I just ignore, but the obvious one that really cares. I think, one of the great things you can do is to reply to them and just have a conversation and ask them what's your device and stuff like that. I think most of the time when you reply like that, they'll be your fan, your supporter. Not necessarily everyone, but yeah, I think the key here is try not to please everyone and try to build, like you said, for the higher end device because they are the one who have the money. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the cloud test lab that DT was talking about, it will be released publicly soon. Right now it's at a beta version, only for some partners. But when it goes live, I think you'll find it really useful.
Hi, I have a question concerning user acquisition in Asia. We're currently on our way to enter this market, and I want to ask which countries except like China, Japan, we have to look at when doing user acquisition, like which countries are the most fast growing and bringing like paying users?
We can go over that. I think everyone has experience on the stage in user acquisition, but from my point of view, so Asia is not one country. I think that's one fact that we need to establish for sometimes international developers looking to come into Asia. And Asia is a collection of very, very many different user profiles and behaviors. So we've got the North Asia, where higher end device, very, very lucrative. Like Japan market is huge, Korean market is massive, high paying user ratio and high end device. Then we've got the Southeast Asia market, where Singapore doesn't really belong to Southeast Asia, it's more advanced. Then you've got the Indonesia market, where we heard it from everyone that you'd be lucky if they paid 3% of the games. So I think it depends on what your strategy will be. If you're looking to get a lot of volume for installs, like Indonesia will be the cheapest to go after. If you want highest quality of users and paying higher cost per install, and able to get them in and move them along the funnel to turn them into loyal users. I think like markets like Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Thailand are all very good market to target. But any thoughts from yourself, TT, Francis?
Francis is probably the best. Francis is probably the best person for it.
You buy for global.
Yeah.
So I think Asia is a very interesting market. You have depends on like what kind of game you are going for. So like the genre is actually very important. So like RPG, action RPG, Korea will do very well. So and like there are different stages of like mobile and different markets. So Korea and Taiwan, they have unlimited data. So if your game is heavy, go for that. And of course you have the big market like China, but the inside is very complicated. There's so many Android stores over there. 20 Android stores. And then you have Southeast Asia where you have a lot of users, but non-paying. And it's how you think of different strategies of how to monetize these users. Are you preparing to do localization? And what kind of genre of games that you are looking at? I mean, casual will do very well in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
I think Francis has been quite modest as well, because gumi games are doing quite well in Southeast Asia as well, and it's paid. They're paying for the in-app items. So I mean, overall, I think Southeast Asia normally, like, a lot of them don't pay, but that growth is definitely ramping up in the Southeast Asian market. And I think gumi is one example where they are paying for the in-app items in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, for now, I think our game is Brave Frontier, and it's actually quite heavy. And in terms of paying user rate and also the number of users coming from Southeast Asia, it's quite a lot. So I'm quite surprised in terms of they are not having much problem in-game. So it's actually a good testament, moving forward. True. Southeast Asia is actually opening up with mobile first coming.
Just one point that I want to add, and I know we're going to get asked to leave the stage soon. I don't know if you guys seen the report from App Annie. I think they're outside, just to the left. But they launched a report a while back. It's called App Behavior. And this is important in emerging market because a lot of these people are, the best computing device that they have in their hands is mobile phone. And oftentimes that's their first mobile. So whatever behavior or good standard that will get shaped and established, that's your opportunity to get there first. So I think before they form the app behavior, if we look across the world, market like US, UK, Japan, for example, the increase in revenue from in-apps, it's not really coming from new users. It's coming from the same users, but being more selective and spending more time within the app that they already developed their preference for. For emerging market, it's very different. These are people who install, uninstall, and keep trying because they still don't know, they're figuring it out. So I think this is something important to keep in mind as you're going into emerging market, that they are still experimental. But if you get there and you get there early, you establish what good look like for them in that market, then the market is yours to take. Indonesia has what, like 250 million people.
Just to add to that, you have to bear in mind that a lot of them are touching gadgets for the first time in your life. So imagine young kids, 12, 13 or something, or even 20s or over, it's their first ever gadget, and like you said, they're trying out things. They're installing everything that they can see on the top ranking, so that's why,
Okay, cool. So that's all that we have time for, but before we go, maybe we just go around 6 of us, and just one piece of advice that you can share with the audience on how to be successful. 3 of you are obviously very, very successful. What is just one sentence or one comment that you can give the audience? The best piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to the last question just now. Actually, Google for Southeast Asia is actually very good, like the sub-dollar pricing, telco billing, and the different formats that's coming out. It's actually quite good. But one advice is, I think it's always test, monitor, and learn. That's the main thing, But before you test, you need to measure. So put in a lot of trackings in the game and test, monitor, and learn. Yeah.
Cool. Anton?
For me, I think what I learned from the 7 years experience building Touchten is that we have to be brave to say no, meaning that we have to kill some games. As an indie, I know it's hard because this is your baby. It's really your child that you're building, and then you say, no, I'm just going to kill it and then build another one. That's hard, but we learned that in the hard way. So we have to just be brave to say no.
Cool. TT?
I think as advice for the indies, I think you need to understand your games really well, understand your business model before, and make sure you have enough content for the next 3 months if you really want to do it. Else, even your games can go up in the top ranking without any further content, you will be dropped off really soon.
Mine would be hybrid monetization. So as part of that, being able to understand your users, what they're doing, what they're likely to engage with, and being able to monetize appropriately.
For me, I think it would be have your monetization strategy before you start promoting. And once you promote, make sure that you track your user quality beyond CPI.
And I think mine's a common theme across all of it is just really understanding your users really well. So replying to your user reviews and listening to them with alpha beta testing, store listing, that sort of stuff. So yeah. So on that note, thank you so much, Anton, Francis, TT, for flying all the way from Malaysia, Indonesia and also Singapore, Francis.
Fusionopolis, very far.
Okay, so thank you guys.